Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun Podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 60. On this episode, to close out Partners Month, we're going to do another in our, ad hoc / ongoing series of advanced topics in swimrun. And this week, we're going to talk about team tactics.
It being Partner Month and all.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you've been enjoying or not enjoying our thematic month of Partners Month, let us know.
Yeah, please.
We have a couple ideas that we were thinking about for later on in the year, maybe. But if it's something that you like that every month kind of has a focus around it, let us know. We're just trying to mix it up and bringing you another kind of shorter episode that is that advanced topics. And it's Partner Month, so here's how to be better as a team.
Exactly. Yeah. So when we're talking about team tactics, we're talking essentially what are the tactical considerations that you can take as a team to improve your race performance. So
even your practicing.
Yeah, exactly. Your team.
You as a team, your
team.
performance as a team. Yes.
Exactly. And these are things you should practice. I think we've talked about this before. We have previous guests that have mentioned this, and we're going to refer to this in the show a little bit, that the more prepared you are for race day for the foreseen stuff and the unforeseen stuff, the better performance you're going to have, the better experience you're going to have, and the more you're going to sort of be leveling up in the sport. So with that, I think this might sound obvious, but a real important tactical consideration, Chipper, is managing your partner.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So I would say, Chris and I tried to put a number around. I was thinking, I would guess over 1,000+ hours that we've trained together or done workout, physical activity together. So
yeah,
I understand that our situation is not very. It's kind of unique. Not everyone lives next door to their swimrun partner and can go on a run whenever. So a lot of it's you might be in a shorter time window when you can focus on this kind of stuff.
Well, I'll add to that. It's we've done a lot of random working out and stuff together, but in swimrun is the first time we're really like a team doing something, right? So
totally.
I think that we're still just trying to figure it out like everybody else.
Totally. And I think one part about the partner management is the first big piece is communication. So I think even if you met someone for the first time, you would say, hey, we're going to do this 7-hour Utila Catalina race.
Yep.
Do you mind if I give you direct feedback during or you can get really you need to just be upfront and clear with them about.
Totally. I mean, I think in swimrun as a metaphor for life, no one can read your mind. So if you're you're married, if you're in a relationship, if you have a partner, you shouldn't expect someone to be able to read your mind. And the sooner you can get to the point where you can have an honest dialogue about what's happening in a race, in life, in your marriage, in your relationships, at work, the less friction there's going to be. And we think that'll lead to a better race experience. Whether you're just trying to podium, win the thing, or you're just trying to have a good time.
Totally. And we've kind of had experiences with that, positive reinforcement experiences. And I think Catalina provided a few of those for us. We had a lot of really positive things in Austin that happened. But, we were talking, one sort of nugget that we were talking about in Catalina as the water was getting colder, we somehow picked up on, or someone said, hey, if you can't really feel your hands, then you might be going a little bit hypo.
Yeah, so I learned that trick when I was training for the OG Escape from Alcatraz, where, no wetsuit, swimming to the cove anyway. So that was a pretty gnarly non-wetsuit swim for me anyway. And yeah, one of the old guys at the Dolphin Club, one of the things they say, if you can't splay your fingers apart,
that's what it was.
Then that's a sign that you might be heading towards, hyperthermia.
Getting too cold.
Yeah, it's not hypothermia, but you should have use of your extremities, which we've also talked about this in sort of open water winter swimming gear talk episode. But yeah, I think, taking a step back from that concrete example, I think having a conversation or communicating with your partner about how you want to communicate can be really helpful to keep passive aggression at bay. Again, this is important to talk about race goals, which we've talked about a lot on the show.
Out before at some point, but
yeah, don't just show up at a race and be like, hey, you're ready to go 7-minute pace on this thing, which probably be something I would do, and then I would pay for it later in the race.
So obviously having super clear and upfront forward communication is going to be really great for managing the partner. We talked a little bit about in the last advanced topics in Swimrun about Swimrun flow and racing with kind of the tether, and I think that plays a really key element here. In the tether provides feedback that is nonverbal. Right. That if you're, hey, if you're going and you're on the rivets and you're maxed out level 10, zone 5, whatever, you're the top is going to pop. You got to still be paying attention to your partner because they might be blowing up, or maybe they're feeling good and pushing you, and there needs to be a power dynamic shift happening or something.
That's a really good example. Yeah, just because you're getting feedback from the tether, that doesn't mean that's calibrated to what's happening in someone's mind, right? So if you're not checking in with your partner, if the tether's super taut, and you're just like, screw this guy, he's not saying anything, so I guess he's fine. But he's, having a cardiac event, trying to hold on. You've failed as a team.
Or
right?
he's performing physically fine, but his mind could be in a really dark place. That hey, just a quick check in. And we even did this when we were really vibing with the tether.
Yep.
Hey, how's it going back there? And I would be like, yeah, I'm good.
Sure.
Or it took 2 seconds, but that was a quick check in that Chris could do every 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Chris, maybe, or whoever, you're going to push the pace a little bit. Hey, can we put an injection in here? Do we want to catch? What do we want to do?
I mean, I think that's a good example. I mean, if we're using that specific example, I was feeling really good. My run was super dialed in. Mm-hmm. And you were essentially giving me the verbal, I could tell from the tether, but you were giving me the verbal feedback. Hey, if you want to gap this, go for it. I got some more if you want to give it more. And that was just really helpful, right? And I would say, because we're such good friends and we've done enough racing together, enough training together to kind of get a sense of how we communicate with each other, I would say, if you don't have an open communicative relationship with your partner, that would definitely be something that would it'll just step up your race. Mm-hmm. Now, I think another thing, and this has been brought up most recently by Susie Moonen, Johan Carlson, Oscar Olsen, all these folks brought this up, the idea of, visualizing what your race is going to be like. And that some of that is...
Or even your practice, too.
Exactly, visualizing the known, visualizing the unknown, what's the goal of this session, what's the goal of this swimmer practice, what are you trying to achieve in this race? And that also comes down to communications, when you're setting goals and you're planning for your unknown, how are you going to react to a situation? A lot of the things in Swimrun, I feel there's a bunch of things happening in these types of races. Your transitions, there's a lot of moving pieces, right? Problem solving, right? Exactly. But a lot of this stuff, you're wasting mental energy if you have to critically think of a solution to a problem that, you could have pre-thought out, right? So we're after we talk about race relation, we're going to give you some very specific examples on what we're talking about. But I think, it's worth mentioning that thinking about what you want your race experience or training to be
before it happens
can be really helpful as a tactic, because it all goes back to communication. You and your partner are in sync of what you're going to do when you're going to do this. What's the course look like? What's the temperature look like? And that's some advice we got from Rianne and Ben, where they're talking about, hey, they have a chart. They know exactly when they're going to eat. They have plans for heat and cold and what they're going to do when they're going to take off or not. That's, there's a reason why they're the best team in the UK.
One thing that we found to be really successful that a lot of other people have mentioned, Oscar Olsen, Johan, and Susie all talked about it, and we'll link all these shows in the show notes, and there's probably more that we'll add there as well. But Chris and I literally went with the race map the night before, or you could do it whenever before, right? What are we doing leg by leg? Who's running? Who's leading the runs? Who's leading the swims? When are we eating?
When are we cabbing down?
When are we cabbing down? Are we thinking about this? What are we bringing? One pair of spare goggles? Are we bringing this? Are we bringing that? Literally a full-on itinerary checklist, and it was really helpful. And we ran over it a little bit more in the morning too. Yep. And by the time we got to this aid station, or we were approaching it, we already knew. And on the paddle, you just kind of put a little asterisk, hey, I marked that as we were writing it out leg by leg. And I said, okay, when we see this asterisk, that means that we need to take nutrition.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, it's coming up here in a bit. And so we would specifically note these things and had it mapped out. Chris and I are kind of equal enough in the swim that we chopped up some of these bigger swims and said, okay, Chris, you take it in or this or that. But
I also put on my big boy pants and led some of the swims all by myself.
You did it.
So.
Yeah, that was good. I was like, wow, Chris is doing a bang up job here. I'm like, if he's cool with it, I'll just hang back here. And that kind of stuff is great. So it's just all about being prepared for the known and the unknown. Just like what Chris was saying, how are you going to communicate to your partner in the water that it's time for you to take a turn on the pool, on the front end of it?
Yep.
We particularly used two paddle tap on the foot that you're going to pass on. So if I'm going to pass Chris on his right, a quick double tap on his foot when he's swimming with my paddle, and I swing around, and he knows to like let off the gas a little bit so I can take charge, and then we take off.
Yeah, and that's something we practice. And I do. I'm like, where's his double tap coming? Where is he?
He's making me suffer.
Is he coming up or what? Yeah. So I think using Austin as an example, I think if you think about you're trying to get from A to B as gracefully as possible with as much flow, when you're wasting energy trying to make decisions, that interrupts that flow. So, using the example of when we knew that you were going to cab down, I wasn't going to cab down because I didn't think I'd need to, but that decision was made. So the second we got out of the water, we already knew what we were going to do. You stopped, pulled up your bib, and I just, cabbed you down. And then we just kept going. It took 2 seconds. Instead of it being like, hey, man, I think I'm going to cab. So can you, it wasn't any of that. It's like, it wasn't even a communication. It was essentially like you started your move, I did mine, and we just kept going.
Yeah. And it was as smooth as that kind of quick change could be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, every bit of it that we felt, and we even allowed some space for audibles as well. And if that's like, I mean, that's even a little bit more advanced. But if you're feeling cool in the partnership, I would say someone should be maybe like the quarterback of it. Like someone's kind of running things.
Yeah.
That seems to work for most people. But somebody can call an audible about. We had a few places in Austin, particular, where we're going to call an audible. Hey, if we're feeling really good about how we're racing, maybe we don't opt for the cliff jump. Maybe we just run it down and save ourselves. We had some kind of tactics that we wanted to outlay. And that was a really brief conversation that we can have instead of it being a drawn-out conversation. Should we do it? I am feeling good. Oh, yeah, but we talked about it, hashing it out whilst we're running.
I mean, I think we talked about it. If we're doing really well, we'll skip the cliff jump. So then when we got to that spot, I think you were like,
do it or no?
I'm like, let's go. And that was it. And it was like, it wasn't like, well, what about the photo? I mean, I regret the photo op, but the decision was to go, and we went. And I think that some of this doesn't even have to be that complicated. So our food plan, our nutrition plan for Austin was, we're taking a gel at every aid station. There was like 4 of them. There was, from our timing, we thought that'd be enough. Even if you take half a gel or whatever, you're taking something in and you're just keeping going, drinking, and then moving on. So it doesn't have to be like super, super complicated, but I think that there are a couple things where, you want to talk about sort of advanced topics in swimrun. One of the things that always stuck with me was when we interviewed Ben and Ryan from Team Precision Hydration UK was their food management plan, right? So they had a plan for
one of the most precise race nutrition plans that I've heard
I
of.
never thought about it that way, but it made a lot of sense. Like one of the partners carried the caffeine gels and the other one carried the non-caffeine gels. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to spend time thinking
Did
about
I accidentally grab the
reading. Yeah, you don't have to worry about any of that. It's like, oh, it's caffeine gel time because we're an hour in, or there's an hour left, whatever your plan is. I thought that was really helpful. Another thing in this sort of food management plan, which we think is super important, is trash management. So Attila and every race, every swimrun race that we've heard of is, if you litter, you're disqualified and you're banned. Maybe they don't all ban you, but yeah, you're just DQ'd. And we obviously want to leave it. We want to leave it better than we found it if we can. So that means having a plan about trash. And what's great, if you don't have to think about it because you've thought about it ahead of time. So Brooke from Team Swimrun Labs, co-host of our Gear Talk shows, like she has a pocket in her Lapa bra that has sort of pockets in it. That's her trash pocket. So she doesn't have to think about where the trash goes. There's just this dedicated pocket where everything goes, and then when she gets to the aid station, she just empties it.
And I think that's a really relatable thing because everyone has been to an aid station and had that goo wrapper or whatever, and it's all sticky, and you're holding your hand, and you're kind of running away, and you're like, oh, fuck. And you kind of look, and the trash can's like too far back, and you're like, well, I'm not turning around because I'm racing, but I'm also not going to just leave it here, so I'll just stuff it somewhere, and it will get nasty. But, like, that thought process takes some bit of energy away from you being able to push your body harder. And Brooke has it figured out that there's no question about what happens with it after. She can just carry on and continue the swim run flow, if you will.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I know we've been calling this tactical, making it sound like it's almost very militant, but I think it's, if that's your personality, it can be that way, but it could also be very zen, right? If you're just totally in the experience and you have everything kind of figured out on how you want to enjoy the experience the best, then all these things kind of fall into place in a really interesting way. And again, like, we're using food management just like as a metaphor for what we're talking about, but it is an actual thing that, we've thought about. We do have a trash plan. Essentially, we're not taking anything that isn't at an aid station. At least that was for our last couple of races.
Yeah,
that was our
game
plan. So we didn't have to worry about it necessarily. But, if, let's say it's a super long race, like you're doing the World Championship or something, like you have to take some nutrition at some point. You might have to stuff it somewhere. So where are you putting it? Just, again, this doesn't take a lot of time, but communicating that with your partner and just having a plan.
What are you doing for your liquids? Are you bringing a soft flask that you have collapsed, filling it up? Andy Blow of Precision Hydration had a lot of good tips there. He shared kind of his Catalina race report, so you heard a little bit of tactics in there. But basically, he kind of had a soft flask that he would fill up as fast as he could, slam it down, and then he kind of would fill another one up halfway and drink it as they kind of hiked on. So that was their plan that they would do. And he knew, hey, I need more salt, so I brought some salt pills. Or his partner didn't need that kind of stuff, so he had to make sure his partner was eating. And so that food, liquids, that all, nutrition plan.
Yeah, so let's talk about, I think, another thing that's really important, and this could almost have its own advanced topics in swimrun sort of dedicated episode. That's heat management. So you're running in a wetsuit, you might be swimming in cold water. There's a lot of things going on. If the sun comes out while you're in a black wetsuit, that's going to get pretty toasty.
Yeah.
So do you have a plan for managing heat? I know for me, I'm very sensitive to changes in temperature, and I don't like being hot. So my plan is almost always to take the swim cap off. Like pop the top because that helps ventilate a lot. Plan number 2 is zipping down, making sure I get enough airflow going. And plan number 3 is cabin down. And you can actually figure out when it makes sense to do these things. Like, for example, using Austin as an example. I don't know why I said example twice. Anyway, whatever.
Well, in our practice, so in this kind of, we'll tie it all together. In some of our practices that we would do in preparation to Austin, we specifically said, okay, this practice, we're going to mimic these run distances so we can measure how I, Chip, and Chris, how we do with a 3.5-mile run when sort of the same temperature. How do we do? And we did that 2 or 3 weekends.
Kind of at race pace, too.
Kind of at race pace, yeah, that's important, too. And the first time I just was all zipped up. I had my cap off, and by the 3-mile mark, so that last half mile, I was cooking. I was not not feeling good. Like, it overly fatigued me.
You were like medium rare at that point.
So just wave it over the flames. My tofu, by the way. Cutting that.
Don't you?
No, I can't. I should never say that. I'm cutting that now. And the next practice that we did that when we simulated that again. Okay, what do I need to do? Do I need a cap down, or should I take my cap off right out of the water and see if that helps me? And it turns out it did. So then we knew in Austin, hey, this longer run, Austin's going to be a little warmer. I'm just not taking any risk. I'm just going to cap down because I'd rather do that because we're going to be pushing the pace a little bit more.
Yeah. And again, these are things that can be communicated, can be planned for. And you can also plan for the unknown, right? So understanding how your body responds to heat and cold can be really helpful, right? So if it's you just figure this out in training, right? If you can simulate water temps, air temps as much as possible, you can get a sense of, oh yeah, this is definitely an arm warmer race for me, or this is the thick boy wetsuit race, or it's a race for the VIG. Which would be a super thin, essentially just like a swim skin with a little bit of padding.
And the Team Precision Hydration UK as well had a great little heat management Zone 3 kind of undershirt that had a little bit of neoprene on it that for those really cold swims, or maybe a longer swim that would make you really cold, they would kind of layer that under their wetsuit as well. And that was something that helped them out. And it's good to experiment with that stuff as well with your gear and testing. Like maybe you have the Arc Kangaroo or the Lapa shirt or bra or something. How do those things affect your heat? And things like that.
Again, it's totally individual, and this is something for you that you need to figure out. But it's also a partner thing, because if your job is to try to bring the best out of your partner, and their job is to try to bring the best out of you, which I would say
that's our goals.
I would say like that's what we think your job should be. Then understanding how your partner responds to heat and how you're going to help him or her sort of address that is important. So we don't think we know everything. A lot of everything we're saying is we've tried or we've heard it on the show, and we're going to keep trying to bring on guests that expand our knowledge and our sort of,
and your knowledge as a listener.
Exactly. So we hope that you found this topic interesting and helpful. We're happy to get any feedback that you have on it. Again,
and your own tactics too.
Yeah, maybe there's something we don't know about that's super amazing and could be a total game changer. So yeah, feel free to come and blow our minds.
lowtideboys@gmail.com
with a Z.
Or those DMs on Insta.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review on iTunes if you're so inclined.
You can also sign up for a newsletter at lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z. And check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, drop us an email at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun activities, hobbies, and other bullshit we do.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
And then a run.
And then another swim.
Then another run.
And then another swim.
And then run to the finish line. And just keep going until you're done.
Yes. Or
until
run
you cross the finish line.
Or run to the car.
Or run to your car.
Somewhere. Just keep running.
Peace.